Next section is called Knowing Your Job. In one of his little-known passages, Robert Louis Stevenson, that's the guy that wrote Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde and Treasure Island, did the perfect portrait of the man who finally failed at everything because he just never learned how to take hold of his work. It goes like this. His career was one of unbroken shame. He did not drink. He was exactly honest. He was never rude to his employers. Yet he was everywhere discharged. Bringing no interest to his duties, he brought no attention. His day was a tissue of things neglected and things done amiss. And from place to place and from town to town, he carried the character of one thoroughly incompetent. That's how we started this conversation today. We started talking about doing your job. Now, this is important. Just as a rough approximation, any officer's work week should comprise about 50% execution and the other half study, if he is to make the best use of his force. The woods are loaded with go-getters who claim they are men of action and therefore have no need of books. So we're talking about studying. We're talking about reading and studying. And these guys that say that there's no need for books, they are of the same bone and marrow as the drone who is always counseling half speed. Don't sweat. Just get by. Extra work means short life. You're better off if they don't notice you. This chant can be heard by anyone who cares to listen. It's the old American invitation to mediocrity. But not all wisdom is to be found in books. And at no time is this more true than when one is breaking in. What is expected of any novice in any field is that he will ask questions. Smart ones if possible, but if not, then questions of all kinds until he learns that there is no such item as reveille oil and that skirmish line doesn't come on spools. So, reveille oil. Reveille is when you wake up in the morning. And reveille oil is something that doesn't actually exist, but you'd say to a new guy, hey, we need to get some reveille oil for tomorrow. Can you go down to supply and get it for me? Or skirmish line. A skirmish line is when you get online to engage the enemy. Mm-hmm. Get online and put your guns in the same direction. That's called a skirmish line. Mm-hmm. Well, he's saying, hey, we need a spool of skirmish line. Echo, can you run down to the supply department and get us a roll of skirmish line? So these are just kind of like little practical jokes. But his point is here, and people ask me this all the time, well, I just checked in. I'm just taking over as leader. I'm a new officer. I'm getting commissioned. What should I do? How should I lead? Ask questions. There's nothing wrong with it. Mm-hmm. There's nothing wrong with it. Back to the book. Wisdom begins at the point of understanding that there is nothing shameful about ignorance. It is shameful only when a man would rather remain in that state than cultivate other men's knowledge. Boom. There is never any reason why he should hesitate, for it is better to be embarrassed from seeking counsel than to be found short for not having sought it. Ideally, any officer should be able to do the work of any man under him. However, it is obviously absurd to expect that any officer could know more about radio repair than his repairman, more about mapping than his cartographical section, more about moving parts than a gunsmith, more about radar than a specialist in electronics, and more about cipher than a cryptographer. The distinction lies in the difference between the power to do a thing well and that of being able to judge when it is done well. A man can say a book is bad, though not knowing how to write one himself, provided he is a student of literature. Though he has never laid an egg, he can pass fair judgment on an omelet. So this is another thing, you're not going to know everything as a leader. Did I know as much about sniping as my snipers? Did I even know close? Did I know as much about, just like he said, as much about the radios as my radio men did? No close to what they knew. You don't need to know everything, but you have to have an understanding of it. And you have to at least be able to understand when something is being done right or wrong. This is another good point. We can ponder the words of William Hazlitt. A man who shrinks from a collision with his equals or superiors will soon sink below himself. We improve by trying our strength with others, not by showing it off. So you can't be afraid to bring stuff up to your superiors. Do you got to be respectful? Yes, you do. But instead of just being a yes man, don't be that.